All right, so section 1, as we've talked about, is going to be an introduction. We'll be looking at foundational documents through the Declaration of Independence. But we'll be doing just some basic definitions and learning about some different forms of government and different origins of states. Okay, so today we're going to just basically start with a definition of government. Okay, definition of government. Government, an institution through which society makes and enforces its public policy. An institution through which a society makes and enforces public policy. Government. Make sense? Okay, remember that first day when I talked about different forms of government, talk about family, the family unit, and school, local, state, national government. Okay, so public policy, okay, is all things that government does. Public policy is all things that government does. So to enforce public policy, you've got to create it. And so whatever government does turns to public policy. Does that make sense? So what's a good example of a public policy?
Speed limits.
A law, yeah, a speed limit law. What other kind of laws do we have? Laws against murder, stealing. Okay. How about a law that forces a school bus that has children on it to stop at a railroad crossing? Okay, that's public policy. Okay. When we talk about all the debates that we have going on in this country, like immigration and so forth, that's public policy. All right. Doesn't necessarily have to be a law. Okay. It could be a resolution of some sort designating what's the day of the march? Is it the 20th or the 19th? It's an official day. I mean, it's the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. I think it's on the 20th. Am I right? Hugh thinks I'm right?
Saturday the 20th?
I think so. Is that the day of the march? Or are they marching Friday?
I think they're marching Friday.
Yeah. Okay. Anyhow, Congress passes resolutions all the time, like Patriots Day, okay, which is April 19th. That's public policy, all right? Now, an institution through which society makes and enforces public policy, okay, they do that over a state, okay? So let's look at the words a state. Now, this can be a little bit confusing. So we live in the United States, right? We have 50 states, but have you ever heard of a country called a state, like the state of Israel? Okay, what's the difference between a state and a nation, or are they the same thing? They can be used the same synonymously, right? They can be used in the same context. Okay. Now we have a republic, so our states make up our nation. Okay. And other countries use different terms like provinces. Okay. But Quebec, which is part of Canada, could also be seen as a state. You know what I mean? It's a province. Okay. It's a political unit. So basically, when you refer to a state or a nation or a county, it's a political unit where a government is formed, and that government is an institution through which society makes and enforces public policy. Okay. There are 4 characteristics of a state. 4 characteristics of a state. How many characteristics? 4. Now let me just give you guys a little tip here. When I have lists like this, like I have 5 or I have 4, okay, oftentimes these make good questions, like short answer questions, like list 2 of this, okay, and explain it. Does that make sense? So when you're studying for a test and you see a list of something, then you're probably going to want to know some of those. You understand? Okay. So 4 characteristics of state. This is really kind of simple. Population. You need people. All right. Just for the sake of it, the least populated country in the world, the smallest country population-wise. Anyone? We're in a Catholic school here, people.
Vatican City.
Yes, Vatican City. Okay. Last count, 826. All right. Some other small ones you don't need notes for the test. Tvolva has 10,000 people. Nauru has 10,000 people. And then Monaco, which is also, I believe, in Italy, has 32,000 people. Now, of course, the largest country in the world population-wise is China. Number 2? India. Okay? Now, this is where people get confused and don't know number 3. Come on. Come on. Over here. Hey. Oh. Yeah, I see what's going on here. The thing's screwed in. The thing on top. Okay. And it's too high. But anyhow, the 3rd most populated country in the world. Take a guess. U.S.? No. I'll give you a hint, not that this will help. It's the largest Muslim country in the world. India's, most of the Muslims in India were pushed out to Pakistan back around the time of Gandhi. Indonesia is the 3rd most populated country in the world. And it's this island chain down here. Okay, it's also the largest Muslim country on Indonesia. So when President Trump did the travel ban on allowing some, not allowing travel from some Muslim countries, Indonesia was not on that list. Okay. All right. What else you need? You need territory. You got people, you got territory, right? All right, so the smallest territory in the world? Vatican City, okay? Monaco on the French Riviera is 0.7 square miles. Vatican City have 0.2 square miles. I don't know if that makes sense. And then Nauru is a Pacific island, 8.5 square miles. San Marino in Italy, 24 square miles. The largest nation, territory-wise, is Russia. Now you guys know, yeah.
Is a lot of that land usable commercial?
Yeah. I mean, maybe for some labor camps during. Now you guys know this about maps, right? Because of the way the Earth is round, that when you do a flat map, at the edges, it appears much larger than it does in the middle. You guys know that? I don't know if anybody ever taught you that. So, this looks, Canada looks really big, but it's not that big. You know, Greenland looks massive, but it's not. It's big. Okay. And you guys, I think you guys that have paid attention over the years, Iceland, there's more population in Iceland and less population in Greenland, which you think it would be the opposite. Okay. All right. The 3rd characteristic of a state is sovereignty. Sovereignty. Let me spell that for you. Sovereignty. Sovereignty. Now, sovereignty is a term that can be used in a lot of different contexts. So, when you turn 16 years old, I don't know if you guys know this. You can get up and walk out of class and never return to school. You can drop out of high school at 16. Okay? Free to go. Okay? And when you're 18, you also receive more sovereignty. So you can buy a shotgun now when you're 18. You can buy cigarettes. You can vote. You can be drafted into the military. But you can't buy a handgun and you can't drink. All right? So you're not fully sovereign yet until you're 21, I guess. Then you become a full sovereign citizen. In the sense of government or a state, okay, sovereignty means that that political union has supreme and absolute power within its own territory. That political unit has supreme and absolute power within its territory. Now, each political unit or state around the world is going to have a different form of government. Every government's a little bit different, okay? But they have supreme and absolute power over that territory. Not necessarily the people, but the territory. Does that make sense? Okay? And then the fourth characteristic of the state is government. And government is an institution through which society makes and enforces public policy, as we've already established several times. So government, politically organized unit. So now you have a state. All right? Now, if we look back throughout world history, okay, and we study different forms of government throughout history or different states, okay, we're going to look at the origins of states throughout history here, okay? So I have 4 origins of the state. Origins of the state. I have 4 of those. How many? The first is the force theory. Force. Like the force is with you. This is where one group or one person forces people in an area, a territory, to submit to their power. Where one person or group of people force the people in an area to submit to their power. And they form a state. Yes?
Should that be like the Taliban or maybe like the ISIS?
ISIS, that'd be a good example. Yeah. Or you go back to people like Genghis Khan, you know, that might just come in and force you to be under his control. Okay? The Vikings. Yeah, so, I mean, you just go back in world history, and generally this is how states were formed, where a powerful group or a powerful person just forced people to submit to them. Yeah? You can kind of transfer that. All right, the second origin of a state is the evolutionary theory. The evolutionary theory. Now, this doesn't really have anything to do with Darwin. But you start with a family. That family grows into a clan. Something they use in Scotland. The clan MacLeod. Okay. That clan grows into a tribe and then settles. No longer nomadic, you understand? And they form a state. Okay, you could see this with many Indian nations, okay? Whether it be the Aztecs, the Incas, you can see that. Some with Native American Indians, they tended to be pretty nomadic, moving around, but there were those that settled in areas and stayed, okay? And it grew out of a family. Okay, and just evolved into a state. Okay, and you can see this in Europe as well, and Asia, and you can see it in Western Hemisphere as well. Okay, The third origin of the state is one that you guys have spent a lot of time studying over your years in school, and that is the divine right theory. The divine right theory. And this is where basically God gave a person or a group, a family, the right to rule. Yeah?
Does everyone believe in the divine right theory, or do they use force theory?
It's dangerous if you live under a divine right king to not believe in the divine right theory. It exists, though. You know, it's part of part of history. So when you guys study, Louis the 14th or Henry VIII or Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, these people, up until you get into the 17th and 18th century, where people began to challenge this divine right. Yes, that kings rule. I mean, we talked about French history, English history. You could have the similar situation in Asia with emperors and so forth. Okay. Now, in the Bible, there's a group of people that ask God for a king, and God grants them a king. 2 of them that we can study back in history that really existed. And who did God give? David and Saul, right? So they asked for a king, God gave them a king, and he had the right to rule. Okay? From God. All right? Now, as far as, Henry VIII or Louis the 14th, did they really have a divine right? They claimed a divine right, and some of the people bought into the divine right. Yes? But over time, that's going to change. Okay? We're going to get a situation where people are going to challenge that with the 4th origin of a state. And that is the social contract theory. Social contract theory. With this, guys, social contract theory is government is an agreement between people and government. Between the governed and the government. Social contract theory. You guys have all heard of Socrates, right? Okay. Socrates really discusses this even before we see this rightly challenged in European history. Socrates was in jail. And he was in jail for breaking the law. Okay? And this is what Socrates said. You don't have to write this down, but he said his argument why he should stay in jail was based upon the idea that his entire way of life is based on laws. And by benefiting from those laws and agreeing to live there, he's agreeing to the punishments set out by those laws. He has entered into a contract with government, and he must keep his part, which is to serve his sentence in jail. Because a social contract is an agreement between we the people to form a government. That government makes rules over us, limits our freedoms. And if we violate those laws, then we must accept the punishments for violating them. That is how our system works. Okay, where we decided to form a government. The people did. Okay, we weren't forced. We didn't evolve. although there is some evolution to our system. And there was no divine right for sure in our system. Ours is a social contract. Okay? And so one of the things we're going to study when our marchers get back is the political philosophies that led to this social contract theory. Okay? So we're going to look at people like Thomas Hobbes, okay, John Locke, Rousseau, and we may even take a look at Montesquieu, okay, and maybe some others. But in the book I have 3 that we're going to read about and then really kind of dissect their different view of a social contract. So for instance, guys, many of you guys are reading The Tale of Two Cities right now. Raise your hand. Okay. What you are experiencing, guys, is the French Revolution, right? You're getting. I was talking to Jack about this morning or last night, and talking about just the killing. Okay, guys, that's inspired differently than the American Revolution. The French Revolution is far more violent and chaotic than ours, even though ours is a war as well. It's different. And it's based on a little bit different philosophy of social contract. Okay? And so that's going to lead to reactions differently by the people within those territories or those states. And so it's very important to understand where we come from. When I talked about the first day of this class, I said why. We're going to learn the why we have the form of government we do. And that's by analyzing human nature. And what forms of government work best for human beings? Okay? Americans are different than Afghan people. We're all human beings, but we all have a different history in different parts of the world. We have a different view of life. Okay? And so every form of government is going to be impacted by those human beings. So we need to understand who we are as a people. Okay? And if when our people change and our population changes, maybe our government has to change as well. We'll debate that. We'll talk about that. Okay? So normally at this time I would have you guys read tonight and come back tomorrow and discuss, but we don't want to do that, which is part of the class because I think it's important that everybody be involved in that exercise and kind of get the framework for what we're talking about. Okay, so at this point, I would leave 5 or 6 lines in your book or in your notes and just drop down, and we're going to look at different forms of government. Okay, so your next header would be different forms of government, and we're going to what 9:05 in here?
Yes.
Okay, the next 3 days. For me, it actually is lovely. Okay, I hardly ever get to teach this long. It stinks that half my students aren't here, but okay. So forms of government. Now here, let's get confusing. All right, you guys ready to get confused? We're going to look at different forms of government based on different criteria. So the first criteria we're going to use is the geographic distribution of power. The geographic distribution of power. And I have 3 of those. 3 different forms of government based on geographic distribution of power. All right? I'm going to use the board a little bit here to kind of demonstrate. All right? So the first one we're going to talk about is a unitary system. And all 3 of these are systems. So unitary system. And to define this, we would call centralized government, where all the power is in one location. Centralized government where all power is in one location. Most countries around the world have a unitary system. Okay? Getting this all right. This is your national government or central government. That'd be a T. Central government. And this is going to be your local or state or regional government. Just by virtue of the size of these boxes, guys, you can tell where all the power lies. Okay? So almost all the decisions for the people, the public policy that is set, the public policy is set from here and administered there. Okay, so local government officials or regional government officials are basically representatives of the central government, and they administer public policy at the local level. So let me just give you an example. This isn't really making sense to you. Okay. The highest elected official in the city of Wichita is the mayor. And he is elected locally. In a unitary system, the mayor would be somebody that was a representative from the national government that was sent to Wichita to administer government. Does that kind of clear that up and make sense to you? Okay? So the big unit, all right, they control everything. They make all the decisions about education, about firefighting, the police force. Comes from the national level. No local cops. You got the national. It's like U.S. Marshals everywhere. Okay? We don't have that yet. Okay? The second system we're going to talk about is the confederal system. And as you guys are aware, our first Constitution was called Articles of Confederation. Okay? And so let me describe that for you. Confederal system, an alliance of independent states. That join together for a common purpose. An alliance of independent states that join together for a common purpose. All right, so basically what we're looking at here, guys, is a loose confederation of states. So we're going to flip this, okay? Or regional, okay? And your national government is small. These people make all the decisions and control the national government. Now, one of the main reasons you would create a confederal system is because you fear what?
The big unit.
A dictatorship, the big unit. You fear tyranny. Say maybe you've lived under a divine right ruler, and you're like, hey, we're not doing that again. We're not going to give that national government any power. Because we don't want to live under a dictatorship. Okay? Now, examples of confederal systems today. Canada uses a confederal system. Okay? One of the best examples is the European Union. Okay? European Union is a confederation of states, okay, that join together for what purpose? Okay, for economic reasons. Okay, so the 13 colonies that became 13 states under the Articles of Confederation, what was the main reason they joined together? Defense. Yeah, I mean, to be unified for defensive purposes. For European Union, it is done for economic purposes mostly, to compete against whom? United States and China. So they all share a common currency now, called the euro, except for England. Okay, they kept the pound. and I think they're leaving the European Union, Brexit. They had a vote in the House of Commons yesterday, and Theresa May, who's the Prime Minister, so they had basically a referendum. If you guys aren't familiar with Brexit, familiar with Brexit? A little bit? Okay. They voted. I mean, the people got to vote. That's what you call a referendum. And the people voted to leave the European Union. But the government was dragging its feet. Okay? And then people said, well, should we have a second vote? And people are like, what the heck, man? We voted on this. And so then the plan to leave the European Union, I guess, is very complicated. And it's going to cost Britain a lot of money to leave. And so there was a vote yesterday for Theresa May's plan for Brexit. And it got voted down big time in the House of Commons. Today, I believe there's going to be a vote of no confidence, okay, in the Parliament, which means they'll hold new elections. If she gets a vote of no confidence, they'll hold new elections and elect somebody else as the Prime Minister. She could be reelected. Sometimes you get a vote of no confidence, but you win the election because your challenger is not as good as you. You understand? And we'll be talking about parliamentary systems here in just a few minutes, if not at the beginning of class tomorrow. Okay. So, confederal system, the third. Can anybody guess? Not unitary, not confederal, but what? Federal. Yeah. Federal. Federal systems. All right. I'm going to give you a definition. I want you to remember it. I want you to put a star next to you. I want you to highlight it. I want you to memorize it. I will reserve the right at any time over the next semester, the time we have together, to call on you and ask you to define federalism. And you should know the answer. And I will pick on you. Okay? All right. Federalism. The sharing or division of power. The sharing or division of power between national, state, and local governments. This is what we have. Okay, so our first Constitution, the Articles failed. Okay, and trust me, we're going to learn all about that, why it failed. All right. So, James Madison and 54 other people got in a room together and hammered out a new Constitution. And this is going to create a federal system. All right, so a sharing or division of power. Okay, so what our Constitution does. I'm going to refer to the Constitution a lot in this class. I have an outline of the Constitution over here. All right. There are 7 articles in the Constitution. The first 3 articles are the 3 branches of government. Okay. The 4th deals with interstate relations, so relationships between states and relationship between states and the national government. Okay. The 5th deals with how you change the Constitution or amend it. The 6th deals with national supremacy, and the 7th is how to ratify the Constitution. Okay? So, really, the meat and potatoes of the Constitution you find in the first 4. All right? That's like what we really need to understand well. And what they do in the Constitution is they list the powers of the national government, because this is a national Constitution. Okay? That governs the whole land. All right? So they're going to list the powers. Now, some powers are not given to the national government. Now, they can't list every power that a government would conceivably have in the future. So, powers that are not given to this government are reserved for these governments. Okay? there is no national police force at the local level. I don't know if I can say that. I mentioned the U.S. Marshals. You think there are any U.S. Marshals living in Wichita? Yeah, sure. Okay. We have air marshals that fly on planes that come in and out of Wichita. We have the FBI. Okay. The Enns, Mr. Enns, the Enns family, their dad, he's an FBI agent. Okay. That's a federal law enforcement officer. Okay. But how do we police at the local level? We have the Wichita WPD, Wichita Police Department. Sedgwick County has Sheriff's Department. What about fire? We have the Wichita Fire Department. We have the Sedgwick County Fire Department. Okay. What about locally? We elect government officials. We mentioned the mayor earlier, right? What other local officials do we elect? Okay. Parks. Well, we don't elect them. They work for the government, but that is something that we do at the local level. Okay. Parks and Recreation, city government, city council, county commissioners, district attorneys, judges. We elect these people at the local level, and they administer the law at the local level. And guess what? They can add laws that are not national. Like an ordinance that says you can play music in your car, but if I can hear your music from 50 feet away, then you're playing it too loud. And you can get a ticket for that. You know those people that come in with the subwoofers, right? And they invade your automobile and invade your space with that, and your body is vibrating, and somebody around you is invading your space. Does that bother you? When you get old, it might. Okay. Other people are like, wow, that's pretty impressive. So local ordinance, local laws, state laws. What do we have at this? Well, at the local level, and let me add one more, and that is USD 259, 266, 247. What's USD stand for? Unified School District. Okay. That is a government. You have a school board. Okay? I got a buddy that's on the school board in Valley Center. Okay? It's one of his jobs. All right? He's a plumber in the daytime, school board member in the evening. Okay? At state level, we have something called the KBI. You know what the KBI is? Kansas Bureau of Investigation, like the FBI. Okay? We have state troopers, right? State troopers. We have the KDOT. Transportation, right? KBOE. Board of Education, my favorite. Okay. Yeah. What's that?
Are you required to say that?
Well, I should be careful. This is going on the internet. Okay. So we make decisions at the state level about education, at the local level about education, and you also have a U.S. Department of Education. Now, we didn't have that until the 1970s. And I don't know how we survived in this country from 1776 to 1976 without a federal Department of Education. I don't know how we educated anybody without the federal government involved. You might ask yourself, how is education done since we added a U.S. Department of Education? Now, I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not scared of the U.S. Department of Education. Okay? Like I'm not scared of China. All right? So, this system is what causes so many arguments in our society. This is a tug of war. Okay? In some parts of our history, when you go back in American history, the national government's going to be winning the tug of war. And sometimes the states are going to win the tug of war. Okay? Let's go back to the Civil War, our largest conflict we ever had. What was it a fight over? Obviously, slavery was the underlying issue, right? Where southern states wanted to keep the institution. And the northern states said, we're going to abolish this institution. And those states said, no. We have the right to decide for ourselves. It's an argument over who has the right, who has the power. Okay? And those states in the South were wrong. They lost. Okay? And that's the tug of war. Okay? Now, but what you've seen over the years, so like I said, we add a department, U.S. Department of Education, is you start shifting some of the responsibilities that should be here, you start shifting them here. Like educational curriculum, okay, which is really something that angers people. Who knows better how to educate their children? Parents in local communities or some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. that went to Yale? I know they're smarter than we are. But do they know how to raise our kids and educate our kids better than we do? Or what to feed them? Think about that. Because we take federal money for free and reduced lunches in this school, they get to control our menu. Who knows better how to feed their kids? Your parents? Uncle Sam. Have a good one.